Most people walk through life believing that money is a constant, a solid bedrock upon which they build their lives, careers, and futures. You work for an hour, you get paid a fixed amount, and you assume that amount holds a specific value. But that is the single greatest lie ever told in the history of economics. The truth is hiding in the very wallet you are carrying right now. You think you're losing purchasing power because of market forces or supply chain issues or greedy corporations. You have been told that inflation is like the weather, a natural phenomenon that just happens sometimes, something unpredictable that we just have to weather until the sun comes out again. But what if I told you that the storm was engineered? What if the rain isn't water, but a deliberate acid designed to dissolve the wealth of the working class while preserving the assets of the elite? Transport yourself back to ancient Rome, specifically the year 211 AD. The empire is at its peak, stretching from the sands of Africa to the mists of Britain. It is the center of the known world, a beacon of civilization, military might, and unshakable power. The streets of Rome are bustling with merchants, senators in white togas, and soldiers fresh from the frontier. But look closer at the transaction happening in the market. A soldier throws a silver denarius on the counter for a loaf of bread. The baker picks it up, squints at it, and bites it. He doesn't trust it. Why? Because the coin doesn't look like the silver coins of his grandfather's time. It looks dull. It feels lighter. The shine is gone. This isn't just a metallurgical issue. It is the first symptom of a disease that kills empires. The emperor hasn't lost the war on the battlefield yet, but he has already lost the war in the treasury. This is the story of the hidden mechanism that connects the fall of the Caesars to the empty feeling in your bank account today. It is the story of a system rigged not by accident, but by design. We are going to explore how governments throughout history realize that taxing people openly causes riots, but taxing them quietly, through the destruction of their money, causes confusion, apathy, and eventually total submission. This is not a lesson about prices going up. It is a lesson about the value of your life going down. We are going to expose the silent tax. To understand how this robbery works, we have to look under the hood of the financial engine. In the ancient world, the mechanism was physical, crude, and mechanical. It wasn't magic. It was metallurgy and deception. Rome ran on the denarius, a coin that was originally 95% pure silver. This purity was the trust mechanism. When a soldier fought for Rome, he traded his blood for that silver. But emperors like Nero and later Septimius Severus had a problem. They wanted to expand the army, build grander palaces, and throw more lavish games to keep the population entertained. But they had run out of silver mines. They had two choices. They could either stop spending, which meant admitting weakness, or they could raise taxes, which meant risking a revolt. So they chose the third option, the hidden door. They recalled the coins, melted them down, mixed in cheap copper, and reminted them. Suddenly, 10 coins became 12. The emperor pocketed the difference. This was the financial innovation of the age, a stroke of dark genius. By the time of Emperor Gallienus, that silver coin was only 5% silver. It was a bronze slug with a thin wash of silver that rubbed off after a few exchanges. But here is the critical part. The state insisted that this piece of copper was worth the same as the old silver. They enforced this value with the sword. This allowed the empire to pay its debts in fake money while demanding real loyalty. It allowed the state to grow to a monstrous size, funding wars that never ended and a bureaucracy that controlled every aspect of life. This wasn't just history. This was economics weaponized against the citizen. The emperor got the money first, spent it while it still had purchasing power, and by the time that money reached the peasant in the field, prices had skyrocketed to adjust for the extra coins in circulation. The wealth had been transferred from the holder of the coin to the minter of the coin. Fast forward to the modern era, and the mechanism has evolved, but the principle remains exactly the same. We no longer clip coins or mix in copper. That is too messy for the modern banker. Today, the mechanism is the central bank and the digital ledger. When the government needs to fund a war, a pandemic response, or a corporate bailout, they do not tax your paycheck directly because they know you would march on the Capitol. Instead, the Treasury issues debt, bonds, and the central bank buys that debt by simply typing numbers into a computer. They create currency out of thin air. This is the modern version of melting down the denarius. They call it quantitative easing or liquidity injection to make it sound technical and necessary, sophisticated terms designed to bore you into submission. But mechanically, it is identical to the Roman scam. It is the dilution of the pool. If you have a glass of fine wine and I pour a gallon of water into it, I have more liquid, but you have less wine. The financial innovation here is the separation of money from reality. By detaching currency from gold or any finite asset, they removed the only brake on the engine. They gave themselves the power to confiscate your labor without ever walking in. But every scam has a shelf life. The transition from dominance to disaster is always the same, and it is driven by the darkest aspects of human nature, greed and the arrogance of power. In Rome, the inevitable turn came when the merchants simply stopped accepting the currency. The trust evaporated. Prices didn't just rise, they exploded. At one point, inflation in the empire hit 15,000%. The complex trade networks that brought grain from Egypt and pottery from Gaul collapsed because no one knew what anything was worth anymore. Society reverted to barter. The richest empire in history crumbled not because the barbarians were too strong, but because their money was too weak. The soldiers on the frontier stopped fighting because their pay couldn't buy food. The system trap sprung shut. The emperors realized too late that you cannot print prosperity. When you destroy the medium of exchange, you destroy the society that rests upon it. This collapse wasn't an accident. It was a feature of the system. Empires don't die on the battlefield. They die on the balance sheet. And this brings us to the most terrifying realization of all. The system requires this corruption to function. In our modern context, look at what happened after 1971 when the gold standard was abandoned entirely. The restraint was cut. Since then, the global debt has ballooned to levels that are mathematically impossible to repay. The governments of the world have borrowed from the future to pay for the present. And the only way they can keep this Ponzi scheme going is to print more money to pay off the interest on the old money. It is a death spiral. They are trapped. If they stop printing, the deflationary crash will wipe out the banking system and the stock market. If they keep printing, they destroy the currency and the middle class. The corruption is visible everywhere if you know where to look. It is why a house that cost 2 years of salary in 1950 now costs 10 years of salary. It is not that the house is better. The house is 50 years older and rotting. It is that your money is worth less. The currency is being debased to keep the zombie system alive. The inevitable turn is happening right now. We see it in the K-shaped recovery, where the asset-holding class, those who own stocks, real estate, and gold, get richer as the money supply expands, while the wage-earning class, you, gets crushed as your paycheck buys less and less. This is the Cantillon effect in action. The people closest to the money printer get the value, and by the time the money reaches you, it is just paper. The trust is fracturing. When people start hoarding assets and rejecting cash, the end of the cycle is near. Look around you. Turn on the news. They talk about transitory inflation or supply shocks. They gaslight you into believing that rising prices are a sign of a hot economy. But if you think the Roman practice of coin clipping is ancient history, look at your own central bank. Look at the balance sheets that have quadrupled in a decade. Look at the crypto markets, which, regardless of what you think of them, are a desperate scream from the public for a form of money that governments cannot dilute. We are living through the same cycle that brought down Rome, the Weimar Republic, and the French monarchy. The technology has changed. We use fiber optic cables instead of smelting pots, but the theft is identical. The uncomfortable truth is that the system is not broken. It is working exactly as designed. It is designed to siphon wealth from the productive many to the privileged few. It is designed to keep you on a hamster wheel, running faster and faster just to stay in the same place, while the ground beneath you moves backward. They have engineered a reality where saving money is a losing strategy. If you put your money under a mattress, it rots. If you put it in the bank, the interest rate is lower than the inflation rate, so it still rots. You're forced to gamble in the stock market just to preserve what you earned. This is the trap. They have turned the entire economy into a casino where the house not only wins, but the house also prints the chips. But there's a way out. The first step is waking up. You must understand that the paper in your pocket is not wealth. It is a claim check on wealth that is expiring by the second. Real wealth is hard assets. Real wealth is knowledge. Real wealth is understanding the game, so you stop being the victim of it. Do not listen to what the bankers say. Watch what they do. They're buying gold. They are buying land. They are buying the things that survive when the paper burns. History doesn't repeat, but if you don't understand it, it'll crush you all the same. If this gave you a new perspective, hit subscribe. History has the answers. I'll show you where to look.